Usually when we talk about a major life change, society has, like, a script ready for you.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole expected routine.
Right. There's a predetermined way you're expected to act, a built-in support system that just kind of automatically kicks in. People literally show up at your front door with casseroles and sympathetic smiles.
Yeah, the casserole brigade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you step into the world of private family court, and that script, it just vanishes entirely.
Poof, gone.
I mean, you walk out of those heavy wooden courthouse doors, maybe after hours of mediation or just a brutal hearing, you get into your car, and you drive back to a house that is just entirely suffocatingly quiet.
It's a very specific kind of quiet, isn't it?
It really is. There's no script for that drive. There is no casserole waiting on the porch for the parent who just lost custody or, had their parenting time severely restricted. There was just this profound, ringing isolation.
And usually a legal document sitting on the passenger seat that feels like it just erased who you are.
Yes. And that silence, it takes on a physical weight. You walk into the kitchen, and the sheer absence of noise, like the lack of backpacks dropped on the floor, the missing sound of a TV in the other room, it presses against you.
We're looking at a landscape today that is deeply, deeply misunderstood by almost everyone who hasn't actively lived through it. I mean, it is the absolute definition of a systemic blind spot.
Which is exactly why we're here today. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore a truly remarkable set of resources dedicated to this exact agonizing experience.
And we've got some incredible material to work from.
We really do. We're pulling from the M.O.M project, which stands for Mending Our Mistakes, as well as this deeply comprehensive guidebook and its companion workbook called Motherhood on Hold, A Bridge to Family Reunification.
Oh, that's a powerful title.
Right. And look, our goal here is not to just summarize legal statutes. We're certainly not here to throw complex, unreadable legal jargon at you.
Oh, please no. There's enough of that in the courtroom.
Exactly. Our mission is to take these sources and provide you, the overwhelmed parent, navigating this system with a calm, validating, and actionable blueprint. We want to help you rebuild your life and ultimately rebuild your relationship with your children.
But before we go any further, I think we need to establish some ground rules for the space we're creating right now.
Good idea.
If you're listening to this, maybe sitting in that quiet house we just described, you really need to know that this deep dive is a zero judgment zone.
Zero judgment.
None. This conversation is not about shame. It is not about reliving past mistakes or, analyzing the missteps that may have occurred or debating the specific circumstances that brought you to this exact moment.
Because that doesn't help anyone.
It doesn't. The source material we're working with, it offers a complete reframing of this experience. It's about taking the profound, immovable love you hold for your kids and transforming it into a structured, resilient bridge back to them.
So let's start with, I guess, the invisible ghost in the room. There's this core concept introduced really early in the M.O.M project materials that fundamentally shifts how we need to look at this.
The societal assumption, right?
Yeah, exactly. Society at large tends to look at custody loss or separation as this purely logistical shift. The prevailing attitude is often just, well, the kids are living at a different address now.
Right, like they sleep in a different bed, they take a different bus, big deal.
But the workbook points out that treating this as a mere change of address completely ignores the internal devastation. What you're actually enduring is a staggering multi-layered identity crisis. The authors call it the loss of witness.
And that phrase, the loss of witness, it names something that most parents feel but just cannot articulate.
Tell me more about that. How do they define it?
Well, when you're a primary caregiver or even just a deeply involved parent living in the same home, your daily life is constantly witnessed by your children, and you are the primary witness to theirs.
You're just there.
Exactly. You are seen making the breakfast, tying the double knot on the sneakers so they don't trip, soothing the fever at 2 a.m. Your identity as a parent is constantly validated by the simple act of being observed in that role.
Right.
So when custody is lost or altered, you aren't just losing time with your kids. You are losing the people who witness your identity. You lose the daily, tangible validation of being seen as the mother or father you know you are.
Wow. You're stripped of the traditional markers of the job. I mean, there's a prompt in the workbook that really brings this to the surface. It states, motherhood is not defined by the walls of a home, but by the love in your heart.
Which is beautiful.
It is beautiful. But when those walls are suddenly empty, when you don't have the bedtime tuck-ins, the chaotic morning rush, or, the homework help at the kitchen table, it creates a massive seismic shift in your foundation.
You start to question everything.
You do. You're standing in that quiet kitchen thinking, well, if I'm not doing the physical things a parent does every single day,
Yeah.
who am I?
It's the whole, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, did it make a sound?
Yes. If I'm a mother, but I have no children to mother today, am I still a mother?
And that identity crisis leads us to the central metaphor of this entire framework. The guidebook visualizes your current situation like this. You are standing on the very edge of what they call the canyon of custody loss.
The canyon.
Yeah, it is a vast, echoing, terrifying chasm. Your children are on the other side, and the space between you just feels entirely uncrossable.
I can literally picture that. It's so daunting.
What the M.O.M project does so effectively is it maps out this canyon. It breaks down exactly what this hidden burden looks like, because the loss of witness, that's really only the beginning.
Oh, definitely.
This canyon is an endurance test of very specific compounding losses that just pile on top of each other.
And honestly, naming these losses is so incredibly validating for anyone going through this. So we unpack the loss of witness,
Yeah.
but the materials then walk us through the loss of influence.
Yeah, the loss of influence. This is about the subtle daily guidance.
Right.
When you live with a child, you don't usually sit them down for a formal lecture on morality. You shape their values subtly, like during a 15-minute car ride to practice.
Or you correct a behavior in real time when they speak sharply to a sibling.
Exactly. You are the one they look to just a glance across the room when they're confused by something they saw on TV. When you lose that proximity, you are no longer the primary ambient voice in their ear. You lose the ability to guide them by simply existing next to them.
And then there's the loss of legacy. This one, man, it feels particularly heavy.
It really does.
It's about the inability to seamlessly pass down your family traditions, your cultural touchstones, or even just your personal stories in the natural rhythm of life. You can't just spontaneously decide to bake your grandmother's pie recipe on a rainy Sunday because they aren't there.
Right, you have to force it.
Yeah, you have to force these legacy moments into highly scheduled, structured visitation blocks or like compressed phone calls, which feels entirely different. It feels manufactured rather than organic.
Which leads directly into the loss of everyday intimacy. We tend to think of intimacy as these big emotional conversations or deep bonding moments, but parental intimacy is in the mundane details.
Like what?
It's knowing exactly how they like their toast cut diagonally, not straight across. It is knowing the specific heavy sound of their footsteps in the hallway when they are tired versus when they are energized.
Oh, wow.
Or knowing which blue shirt they absolutely refuse to wear because the tag scratches their neck. When you are separated by that canyon, you lose the texture of their daily lives. You miss the microdata that proves how deeply you know them.
That microdata is everything. And because you're missing it, you suffer the loss of advocacy. I think about this in really practical terms.
Sure.
You aren't the one at the parent-teacher conference reading the subtle body language of the math teacher. You aren't the one at the pediatrician's office.
No, you're shut out.
Imagine your child has, like, a mild peanut sensitivity. It's not a full allergy, but it makes them uncomfortable. You know exactly how to handle it. But now, you aren't the one packing their lunch, and you aren't the one talking to the school nurse.
You're sidelined from that fierce protective role.
Forced to trust a system or a co-parent that you might feel is fundamentally failing you.
And that sidelining bleeds directly into the loss of perception, which is how the outside world views you. This is a critical piece of the puzzle to examine.
Let's get into that, because society holds an incredibly narrow, often punishing definition of parenthood.
Oh, and it is exponentially true for mothers. The cultural narrative equates being a good mother strictly with constant physical presence and primary caregiving.
Always being there.
Right. So when a mother loses custody, the societal assumption is almost always immediate and catastrophic. It creates a horrific double standard. Non-custodial parents face a stigma that completely ignores the complex, nuanced realities of life.
Because the world rarely stops to consider the financial devastation, right?
Exactly. Or the mental health struggles, systemic inequalities, domestic abuse, or simply the brutally adversarial, insanely expensive nature of the family court system that may have led to this arrangement. The world looks at the non-custodial parent and just makes an instantaneous, uncharitable judgment.
And the tragic culmination of all that external judgment is the final loss listed in the workbook, the loss of trust with yourself.
That's the most dangerous one.
It is. When the court hands down a ruling that minimizes your role and your community looks at you with suspicion, it is almost impossible not to internalize that.
You start to believe the world's perception.
You begin to question your own memories, like,
Yeah.
was I really that bad? Am I actually unfit? You lose trust in your own internal compass, your own capability, and your own worthiness to be their parent.
You literally begin to agree with the paperwork rather than your own soul.
God, that's dark.
It is, but the workbook introduces a concept here designed to disrupt that internal collapse. They call it a mother's echo.
Okay, tell me about the echo.
I want you to visualize standing at the edge of that immense canyon of custody loss. You call out to your children on the other side. You say, I love you, I'm still here, I'm fighting for you. And all you get back is this faint, distorted, delayed echo of your own voice.
Which feels awful.
The natural human instinct is to interpret that echo as a haunting. We take it as proof of our absence, proof that we are alone, proof that we are failing.
But the guidebook flips the physics of that entirely, doesn't it?
It does. Let's think about how an echo actually works. For an echo to exist, your voice has to travel across a vast distance, hit a solid surface, and bounce back to you.
Right.
An echo doesn't happen in an infinite void. If you shout into a black hole, you hear nothing. The echo is scientific proof that your voice and your love are strong enough to reach across the divide.
Because it hits something.
Yes. It proves there is a solid surface on the other side. The canyon is wide, yes, but it is not infinite. An echo means the signal is traveling. It means the connection, however strained, however distant, still physically exists.
Okay, that reframing changes everything. The echo isn't a ghost, it's a radar ping. It means they are out there.
Exactly.
To help you actively harness this, to, shift your identity away from the legal paperwork, the workbook utilizes a specific exercise. It asks you to fill in the blanks for two statements. I am a mother who, and even though I am not with my children physically, I am still.
It's a directed effort to force your brain to redefine your identity entirely outside of physical proximity.
Because if you do not take the reins and actively redefine your identity, the court system will happily define it for you. And the court system defines you by a visitation schedule, a child support calculation, and a legal designation.
You have to claim an identity that is vastly larger and more permanent than your current legal status.
So let's pause here and look at this from the perspective of someone actually in the trenches right now. This whole experience of the canyon, the echo, the empty house, it really feels like invisible grieving.
It does.
You are mourning a relationship with someone who is still alive, but who is rendered completely inaccessible to you. If society, your ex-partner, the judge, and the school system are all operating on that narrow definition of parenthood, judging you purely on physical presence, how does a parent realistically separate their internal self-worth from that massive, crushing external judgment?
That's the real struggle.
I mean, how do you sit at your kitchen table and write, I am a good parent in a workbook when a judge just banged a gavel and stamped a piece of paper declaring you only get to see your kids every other weekend?
That tension is the crux of the entire early stage of the M.O.M project. It is the hardest knot to untangle. You begin to separate your self-worth by deeply, fundamentally recognizing that the legal system is a structural entity, not a moral one.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. A judge's order is a legal arrangement based on a very specific, often flawed, and incredibly limited snapshot of your life at a specific moment in time. It is filtered through specific legal statutes and the arguments of opposing counsel. It is not an omniscient ruling on your soul.
It doesn't measure your love.
Exactly. The workbook asks you to build a firewall between two concepts, your circumstance and your character.
Circumstance versus character. Tell me how they distinguish those.
Well, your circumstance is the reality of your situation, and it might be severe. Your circumstance might be that you're battling an addiction or experiencing sudden poverty or recovering from a mental health crisis, fleeing domestic violence, or quite frankly, that you were simply out-resourced and out-lawyered in a courtroom.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. Circumstances are temporary states of being, often heavily influenced by external factors. Your character, on the other hand, is the bedrock. Your character is the fierce, unyielding love that is driving you to read a workbook, listen to a deep dive, and figure out how to build a bridge back to your kids. The court judges the circumstance. You must anchor yourself to your character.
Understanding that difference is just a lifeline. It gives you permission to say, my circumstances are a disaster right now, but my character is intact.
Yeah.
But recognizing what you have lost and identifying your character, that's only the first part of the journey. To actually begin building this bridge across the canyon, we have to talk about the intense emotional weather raging inside it.
Oh, the weather in that canyon is rough.
Standing at the edge, the wind is howling, you are being battered by grief, shame, guilt, and anger.
And the workbook is very intentional about categorizing this emotional terrain. You cannot navigate a storm if you don't know what kind of weather system you're dealing with. If you treat a tornado like a rainstorm, you will be destroyed. So they break it down.
Let's start with grief.
Right. As you mentioned, this is disenfranchised grief. Nobody sends you a sympathy card when you lose custody. There is no funeral to mark the transition. It is a haunting that hits you in the most mundane moments.
Like at the grocery store.
Exactly. It hits you in the grocery store when you absent-mindedly reach for their favorite brand of cereal, only to realize you don't need to buy it. Or you're at a park alone and you see another family pushing a swing, and the physical pain in your chest drops you to your knees.
And running parallel to that grief is shame. The workbook refers to shame as the hidden burden. I really appreciate how they personify it.
Yeah, they describe shame as a insidious liar.
It isolates you in that quiet house and just whispers in your ear that you are fundamentally broken. Shame tells you that you are unworthy of love, that you're a failure as a human being, and that you are entirely beyond redemption. Shame makes you want to close the blinds, turn off your phone, and hide from the world.
And we must draw a thick, dark line between shame and our next emotion, guilt.
Because they're different.
Very different. They feel similar in the body, but psychologically they operate completely differently. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt says, I did something bad.
Right.
Guilt is the crushing, suffocating weight of the what-ifs. What if I hadn't sent that angry text message? What if I had worked more hours to make more money? What if I hadn't trusted the wrong person with my vulnerabilities? Guilt keeps you perpetually anchored in the past, forcing your brain to replay the tape of your worst moments over and over again.
Searching for the exact second you could have magically fixed everything. I can imagine a parent lying in bed at 3 in the morning, endlessly scrolling through old text messages with their ex, analyzing every word, torturing themselves with how they could have phrased things differently.
It's the 3 a.m. doom loop.
How does a brain break out of that loop? Because the guilt feels so incredibly necessary. It feels like if you stop feeling guilty, it means you just don't care.
That right there is the psychological trap. The workbook makes a crucial distinction between guilt and responsibility. Guilt actually masquerades as responsibility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it tricks your brain into feeling productive. It tells you, look at how much I am agonizing over my past mistakes. Look at how much I am suffering. Therefore, I am taking this seriously. But guilt is ultimately paralyzing. It keeps you entirely self-focused on your own pain.
So what's true responsibility then?
True responsibility is a completely different mechanism. True responsibility is looking at the past with clear, unflinching eyes and saying, yes, that happened. Yes, my actions contributed to that outcome. And then this is the key, using that acknowledgement to choose entirely different actions moving forward. Responsibility is active, forward-moving, and focused on the solution. Guilt is passive, backward-looking, and focused on the pain.
That is profound. Guilt is staring at the wreckage. Responsibility is picking up a shovel.
Yes.
And the antidote to that paralyzing guilt, according to the sources, is self-compassion and forgiveness. But people hear, forgive yourself, and they think it means letting themselves off the hook for things they actually did wrong.
Right, but forgiving yourself does not mean you are letting yourself off the hook. It means you are untying the hook from your own flesh so you can actually walk forward. You cannot build a bridge if you are chained to a boulder of your own making.
Such a powerful image. And then, of course, we arrive at anger.
Anger.
Anger in family court is the ultimate double-edged sword. And let's be honest, the anger is usually entirely justified. It is born from the very real pain, the very real delays, and the very real injustices of a legal system that often feels cold and arbitrary.
We must validate that anger completely. It is a completely natural, biological, and logical response to feeling powerless. It is the natural response to being misunderstood, lied about, and having the most precious thing in your entire life regulated by strangers in black robes who have known you for maybe 15 minutes.
It's infuriating.
The M.O.M project does not patronize you by telling you to just stop being angry. That would be impossible. Instead, it asks you to interrogate the anger. When the heat rises in your chest, ask yourself, what specific boundary is being violated right now? And more importantly, how can this intense energy be channeled?
So using it as fuel.
Exactly. Can it be used as fuel to power your endurance rather than a destructive acid that eats away at the very bridge you are trying to build?
To help process this, The workbook offers an exercise called releasing judgment, and I want to walk through how powerful this is.
Please do.
I want you, listening right now, to picture this scenario. Imagine a close friend, someone you love dearly, comes over to your house. They sit at your kitchen table, tears streaming down their face, and they confide in you about their custody situation. And it is the exact same situation you are in.
Same mistakes, same everything.
Same mistakes. They have the exact same court orders, the same restrictive visitation. What compassionate, comforting words would you say to them in that moment? You would never look your best friend in the eye and say, you know what, you're a monster, you failed, you don't deserve your kids.
Never.
You would hold their hand and say, you are going through absolute hell. You made some mistakes, but I know your heart, I love you, and we are going to figure out how to fix this. So the exercise asks a devastatingly simple question. Why is it so incredibly hard to turn that exact same voice inward?
The psychology behind that is fascinating. We hold ourselves to an impossible standard of perfection that we would never, ever demand of someone we love. We believe our own inner critic is delivering objective, unvarnished truth, when in reality, that inner critic is just repeating the trauma and the systemic judgment we've absorbed.
So true.
We have to consciously practice talking to ourselves as if we were our own best friend.
Wait, hold on. I understand the theory of this. I understand using self-compassion and turning anger into fuel.
Yeah.
But let's look at the reality of the battlefield.
Okay, let's go there.
It is easy for us to sit here discussing a workbook in a calm environment and talk about productively channeling anger. But when a parent is in the middle of private family court litigation, when you receive an email from your ex's lawyer on a Friday afternoon that is completely full of fabrications and attacks on your character, anger often feels like the absolute only armor a parent has left. It feels protective. Are we really asking someone to drop their shield and put down their armor while they're actively taking fire?
You are identifying the exact friction point where theory meets reality.
Yeah.
The family court system is adversarial by design. It is a battlefield. But let's think about what heavy armor actually does to a person over a long period. Yes, it might deflect a blow, but it is exhausting to carry. It severely restricts your vision and your movement. It isolates you.
It's heavy.
Very heavy. The workbook is not asking you to walk onto the battlefield naked and defenseless. It is asking you to make a strategic trade. It is asking you to trade the heavy, blinding, exhausting armor of reactive anger for the much stronger, lighter, and far more effective shield of strategic clarity.
Strategic clarity. How does that practically play out when you get that Friday afternoon email?
Okay, when you are operating from blind, reactive anger, you make unforced errors, you receive that inflammatory email, your heart rate spikes, your armor goes up, and you immediately fire back an angry, defensive text message to your co-parent.
Which is the worst thing you can do.
It's terrible. That text message is screenshotted, handed to their lawyer, and used as Exhibit A against you in the next hearing to prove you are hostile and uncooperative. You lose your temper at a custody exchange because your boundaries were pushed, and that outburst is documented.
So it's not about giving in.
No. Dropping the destructive anger isn't about surrendering to your ex or agreeing with their lies. It is about protecting yourself from those unforced errors. It is about becoming legally and emotionally untouchable because you are calm, collected, and entirely focused on the long game. You don't react, you respond strategically.
That makes perfect sense. You trade the reactive anger that hurts your case for strategic clarity that protects your future.
Exactly.
But if we are trading our angry reactive armor for strategic clarity, that leaves us vulnerable. Where do we put all that raw emotion, all that panic, if not into our legal fight?
The Motherhood on Hold framework suggests we can't build a new strategy until we clear the debris of the old one. This brings us to the phase of site preparation and drawing the blueprint for healing.
Once you learn to navigate those intense emotional storms without letting them blow you off the cliff, the fog in the canyon begins to clear. You can finally look at the ground beneath your feet.
In construction terms, this is site preparation. Before you can pour a new concrete foundation, you have to clear the land. In the framework, Stages 1 and 2 are categorized as acceptance and surrender.
Now, I want to tread very carefully here, because the word acceptance, especially for a parent fighting for their children, can be an incredibly triggering concept.
It really can.
The sources are meticulous about clarifying that acceptance does not mean condoning the circumstances. It does not mean you agree with the judge's ruling. It doesn't mean you think the situation is remotely fair, and it absolutely does not mean you are giving up on changing it.
Not at all.
Acceptance simply means clearing away the emotional debris of denial. You have to look at your current reality with completely clear, unclouded eyes. You cannot navigate out of a maze if you refuse to admit where you are currently standing.
It requires taking a brutally honest, fearless inventory of your life in two very distinct, separate areas: legal matters and emotional well-being. You have to know the exact dimensions of the problem you are facing.
So on the legal side.
On the legal side, what do the court orders actually literally say, regardless of what you think they should say? What are your actual legal deadlines? What are the financial realities of your child support?
And emotionally.
Emotionally, where are your blind spots? What specific actions by your co-parent trigger your reactive anger?
To manage this massive influx of information and stress, the program introduces two tools that I genuinely believe are the most practical, life-saving instruments in this entire process: the record-keeping binder and the personal journal.
Oh, these two tools are the physical manifestation of profound compartmentalization. When you are going through custody loss, your logical brain and your emotional nervous system are constantly at war. They are literally short-circuiting each other.
They really are.
The record-keeping binder is your logical, objective, cold hard facts tool. It is designed specifically for the family court system. This is where you organize every court order, track every child support payment, log every communication with the co-parent, and document your children's well-being and medical records. It is sterile, it is professional, it is emotionless.
And the personal journal is the exact opposite of sterile. The journal is your safe space for the messy, raw, unfiltered, screaming into the void emotional work. It is where you write down the deepest fears, the white-hot rage, the suffocating grief.
Yes.
And keeping these two things physically totally separate is how you maintain your sanity. You do not put your emotional pain or your rants about your ex into the legal binder, because a judge doesn't care about your feelings. A judge cares about facts. And you do not let the terrifying legal deadlines and court jargon hijack your emotional journal, because your soul needs a place to rest from the litigation.
The source material uses a brilliant architectural visual to explain why this compartmentalization works neurologically. They show two floor plans, Building A and Building B.
Tell me about Building A.
Building A is this chaotic, gray, amorphous shape. The walls are crooked, the support beams are scattered randomly, there are dead ends, and everything flows into everything else. This is what your mind and your nervous system looks like when you are trying to navigate family court without a compartmentalized system.
Just a mess.
The panic about the lawyer's bill is mixing with the grief of missing your child's soccer game, which is mixing with the anger at your ex's text message. Everything is bleeding into a state of constant, high-alert panic.
The paperwork is literally soaking in the panic.
Exactly. But then they show Building B. Building B is a perfectly structured floor plan. The rooms are clearly defined, the walls are straight, the support pillars are evenly distributed to carry the load. The binder and the journal are the tools that allow you to move your internal life from the chaos of Building A to the structured resilience of Building B. You are literally building separate rooms in your mind to house different types of stress. By doing this, you ensure that a legal stressor doesn't collapse your emotional well-being, and an emotional breakdown doesn't ruin your legal strategy.
Let's ground this acceptance stage with an analogy. Think of it like standing in the ashes of a house fire. Your family home is burned to the ground. You aren't happy it burned down. You aren't saying the fire was fair, and you certainly aren't forgiving the arsonist. You're devastated.
Right.
But you cannot pour a new, structurally sound concrete foundation directly on top of hot, shifting ash. You have to sweep it away. You have to accept that the old house is completely gone before you can even begin to build a new one.
That's a great way to look at it.
But I want to ask you about the other word they pair with acceptance, which is surrender. For a parent whose entire biological imperative is to fight tooth and nail for their children, telling them to surrender sounds terrifyingly like telling them to give up.
Yeah.
How is surrender an active, strengthening step?
It is a terrifying word, largely because it is so deeply misunderstood in our culture. In the context of private family court and the motherhood on hold framework, surrender does not mean yielding to the opposition. It does not mean abandoning your children or waving a white flag.
So what does it mean?
Surrender means intentionally relinquishing your psychological grip on the things you have absolutely zero control over. You cannot control what your ex says to the judge. You cannot control the speed at which the legal bureaucracy operates. You cannot control the bias of an evaluator. You cannot control the past.
That's so hard to do.
It's incredibly hard. But when you spend all your emotional and physical energy trying to control those uncontrollable variables, you have absolutely nothing left in the tank for the things you can control and the things you can build.
So what does the act of surrender practically look like?
Surrender means recognizing you are in a tug of war with a brick wall and choosing to put down the rope. You put down the rope in a game you cannot win, so you can free up your hands to pick up a hammer and start building your bridge. It is the ultimate act of conserving your vital energy for what actually matters: your own healing, your legal readiness, and your connection with your kids.
Putting down the rope so you can pick up a hammer. I love that.
Yeah.
That perfectly transitions us to the next phase, substructure construction.
Time to build.
With the site cleared, the ashes swept away, and the blueprints drawn, it is time to pour the concrete. We need to establish the substructure, the deep emotional and legal pillars that will actually bear the immense weight of this journey. Stage 4 is all about erecting these building blocks. The M.O.M project highlights two massive non-negotiable pillars: peer connections and legal readiness.
Let's examine the first pillar: peer connections. The M.O.M project operates heavily on a core motto that is profoundly moving: just show up. They offer services and support groups built entirely on the premise that no perfection is required, no embarrassment is allowed, and no silence is forced.
There is a line from their empowerment promises that reads, "Every mother deserves dignity, no matter her story." That alone is so validating. They talk extensively about the profound, life-altering difference between going through this nightmare completely alone, isolated in that quiet house we talked about at the very beginning, versus going through it within a fellowship.
The psychology of why fellowship is necessary ties directly back to our discussion on shame. Isolation is the dark, damp petri dish where shame rapidly multiplies.
Ugh, yes.
When you are sitting alone in that quiet house, your brain convinces you that you are the only parent in the history of the world who has ever lost custody, the only one who has ever made a catastrophic mistake, or the only one who has ever been treated unfairly by a judge. Your uniqueness becomes your prison.
But community fixes that.
Community is the ultimate, immediate cure for shame. When you sit in a room, whether it's a virtual Zoom room or a physical circle of chairs with other parents who listen to your darkest, most embarrassing legal failure and say, "I know exactly how that feels. I went through the exact same thing, and here is how I survived it," the shame simply cannot survive. It evaporates in the light of shared experience. Fellowship breeds empowerment because it completely normalizes the struggle.
It takes the weapon away from the inner critic.
Yeah.
And then there's the second pillar, which must stand right alongside the emotional one: legal readiness. And I really appreciate that the sources use highly accessible, plain language here. Legal readiness is not about you suddenly going to law school at night.
No, please don't.
It is not about becoming your own litigator and learning how to cite case law. Legal readiness is about systematically removing the paralyzing, suffocating fear of the unknown.
Fear in the family court system thrives in the dark. When you don't know the timeline of your case, when you receive a summons and you don't understand a single paragraph of the legal jargon, you feel like a helpless victim strapped to a conveyor belt moving toward a buzzsaw.
Exactly.
Legal readiness is simply about turning on the lights in that room. It means actively organizing that record-keeping binder we discussed. It means learning the precise legal difference between legal custody, who makes the decisions, and physical custody, where the child sleeps. It means learning how to communicate efficiently and effectively with your lawyer, providing them with clear timelines and evidence, so you become an active, empowered partner in your own case, rather than a terrified, passive bystander waiting to be rescued.
The workbook takes this concept and makes it actionable. It asks you to map out your current support system. It prompts you to identify the people in your life who actually make you feel empowered and clear-headed versus the people who drain you, judge you, or whip up your reactive anger. And then it asks you to make a concrete, actionable plan to fill the gaps.
So you have to fill the gaps.
If you look at your map and realize you need legal help, you find an advocate, a legal aid clinic, or a more communicative attorney. If you realize you have zero emotional support, you find the fellowship, a therapist, or a support group.
Both pillars must be built simultaneously because a bridge cannot stand on a single pillar. If you are legally brilliant, your binder is perfectly tabbed, but you are emotionally shattered and constantly reacting in anger, the bridge collapses.
Right.
Conversely, if you are emotionally serene, attending therapy every day, but you completely ignore the court deadlines and fail to file your paperwork, the bridge also collapses. You need the logic of the law and the emotional regulation of fellowship firmly anchored in the bedrock.
But I see a massive tension here, a real tightrope that parents have to walk. On one hand, The emotional fellowship and the therapy require you to be completely vulnerable. You have to be open, raw, and honest about your deepest flaws, your addictions, your mental health struggles, or your mistakes in order to heal. You have to show your open wounds. But the legal system, family court, demands the exact opposite. It demands you be stoic, guarded, perfectly composed, and that you never, ever show a single crack in your armor, lest it be used against you as evidence of instability. How does a human being safely switch between those two wildly different, conflicting modes of survival without getting emotional whiplash?
That tension is the defining challenge of the non-custodial parent. And the answer goes back to the absolute necessity of the compartmentalization we discussed with building A and building B. To survive this, you have to become bilingual.
Bilingual.
Yes. You must learn to fluently speak the language of vulnerability for your fellowship, your therapist, and your personal journal. That is the safe room where you are allowed to bleed. And simultaneously, you must learn to fluently speak the language of stoic, factual, objective professionalism for the courtroom, for your co-parent, and for your binder.
Ah, I see.
It is not about being fake or authentic. It is about recognizing which environment is safe for which part of your authentic self. You do not hand your tear-stained emotional journal to the judge, and you do not coldly read your legal binder to your support group. You master the environments to protect yourself.
You become bilingual in your own survival. That is a brilliant way to frame it. And once those massive pillars of legal readiness and emotional support are firmly poured and set, you finally have a substructure strong enough to support the deck. The deck is the part of the bridge you actually walk on. In the Motherhood on Hold framework, stage 6 is where all this preparation meets reality. This is deck construction.
The deck represents the tangible, daily, highly practical actions where actual movement happens. This is where the abstract dream of reunification translates into the reality of daily consistency.
This involves establishing safe, predictable routines for your children, even if you're doing it from a great distance or through restricted means. It is about fostering open emotional communication and providing clear boundaries that are always paired with love.
The guidebook does some profound myth-busting around the concept of reunification here. Society, movies, and sometimes even parents themselves view reunification as a cinematic, singular event.
The slow motion running toward each other.
Yes, exactly. We imagine a scene where a judge bangs a gavel, the courtroom doors fly open, the sweeping music swells, and everyone runs toward each other. But reunification is not a single magical moment granted by a piece of paper. It is a gradual, intentional, sometimes clumsy, and heavily practiced daily routine. Trust is not rebuilt in a courtroom. It is rebuilt in the microscopic consistencies of your daily actions.
Creating those safe routines does not require living together full-time under the same roof. The workbook provides incredible granular examples of what this looks like. It could be a steadfast commitment to calling them every single Tuesday at 6:40 p.m. on the dot.
Tuesday at 6.
And moving heaven and earth to ensure you never miss that call so they learn your word is an unbreakable bond. It could be sending a brief text message every morning that simply says, "Have a great day at school. I love you," without attaching any demands or expectations for them to reply. It is the steady, unshakable consistency that builds the feeling of safety for a child whose world has been turned upside down.
And you must pair that consistency with healthy boundaries. Even from afar, you are still their parent. You are not just a friend. You still uphold family values. But you learn to do it through guidance and love rather than harsh discipline or control, which is often impossible from a distance anyway. And critically, this stage of deck construction requires ongoing self-evaluation and what the program calls maintenance.
Because physical bridges need constant structural checks to ensure they don't collapse.
Exactly. You don't build the Golden Gate Bridge and then just walk away for 50 years assuming it will be fine. You have teams checking for rust, inspecting the cables, and looking for stress fractures.
Make sure it's sound.
Right. The workbook emphasizes that self-care in this stage is not a luxury. We aren't talking about bubble baths and spa days. Self-care is the mandatory structural integrity check required to keep your bridge standing. If you stop sleeping, if you burn out entirely, if you lose your emotional regulation and slip back into reactive anger, the bridge begins to violently sway. You must maintain your own foundation so the bridge remains safe for them to cross.
The workbook actually provides an actionable strategy to manage the overwhelm of this maintenance. It forces you to take the massive, paralyzing goal of full reunification, which might feel 10 years away, and break it down into tiny, hyper-realistic goals for the next 3 months.
That is so important.
Because if you just stand at the edge and stare at the massive canyon, you will freeze.
Mhm.
But if you just look down at your feet and focus on the next single wooden plank, you have to nail down, maybe it's just completing your parenting class or having 3 peaceful phone calls in a row, you can do it.
You can nail down one plank.
I also want to highlight the concept of service, which the M.O.M project brings up beautifully. They highlight that healing is a cyclical community effort. You receive real life-saving help from women who have survived the fire, and part of your maintenance is eventually turning around and becoming the woman offering guidance to the next mother whose house just burned down.
Mentorship and service fundamentally reinforce your own transformation. When you guide a newer, terrified parent through setting up their first legal binder, or when you just sit silently with them in their grief, it validates exactly how far you have walked across your own bridge. You become the living, breathing proof to them and to yourself that the bridge can hold weight.
I want to look at one final, intensely difficult reality. Let's use the bridge analogy. You have done the work. You cleared the site, swept the ashes, built the foundation, poured the pillars, and laid a beautiful, sturdy deck. You are making the Tuesday 6:00 p.m. calls. You are sending the letters. You're maintaining your emotional regulation.
You're doing everything right.
But here is the heartbreaking reality for so many non-custodial parents. What if you build this perfect, structurally sound bridge? You stand on your side, reaching out with absolute consistency and love, but your child refuses to step onto it.
It happens.
What if they're dealing with their own immense trauma, their own profound confusion, or perhaps even alienation and pressure from the other parent? What if they simply will not cross? How does a parent cope when they do all the agonizing labor of building the bridge, but the traffic never comes?
That is the most painful, devastating question in this entire process. And answering it requires the absolute deepest level of emotional maturity and surrender we've talked about today. If you build the bridge and they do not cross, you must anchor yourself to this truth. Your job was only ever to build the bridge and keep the lights on.
Wow. Build the bridge and keep the lights on.
Yes, you cannot force another human being, even your own child, to walk across a bridge before they are psychologically or emotionally ready. They have their own agency, their own complex pain, and their own timeline for healing. But if you have done the work, if that bridge is sturdy, safe, and illuminated with your consistent, unpressured love, then whenever they are ready, whether it is next month, or when they turn 18 and leave the other house, or when they're 30 years old having children of their own, the path will be there waiting for them.
They won't have to search for you.
Exactly. They will not have to search for you in the dark. The bridge you build today is a permanent monument to your availability.
Your job is to build the bridge and keep the lights on. That is a breathtaking way to look at it. It completely removes the burden of controlling their reaction.
Right.
Building this bridge, engaging in the agonizing, exhausting, beautiful work outlined by the M.O.M project and the Motherhood on Hold workbook is never, ever a failure. Even if the terrain is rough, even if your knees are scraped and you feel like you're moving forward an inch a year.
Every challenge you face, every motion that gets denied in court, every missed phone call or unreturned text message is simply another opportunity to check the structural integrity of your bridge and reinforce the pillars. You are not defined by the temporary custody arrangement that is currently stamped on a piece of paper in a courthouse file. You are defined by your unyielding courage to rebuild yourself in the face of it.
I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now. The parent sitting in that quiet house, perhaps looking at an empty bedroom down the hall. We know this journey is exhausting. We know the family court system is a daunting, complex, and often incredibly cruel labyrinth. But there is real, tangible, structural hope. The love you have for your children transcends physical distance. It transcends the limitations of court orders and visitation schedules that echo you hear across the canyon. It is scientific proof that you are still their parent and that your love is reaching them.
The work you are doing right now, in the silence, in the pages of your journal, in the organization of your binder, is the most important work of your entire life. It is the quiet labor of a true parent.
We want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to carry with you as you close this out. We've spent this entire time talking about building this bridge so your children can eventually return to you. But what if the bridge you are boarding right now isn't just a physical pathway for them to cross? What if this entire grueling, painful process is actually a masterclass in resilience that you are silently, powerfully teaching them?
That's powerful. Children do not learn how to navigate the complexities of the world by listening to our lectures. They learn how to survive by watching closely how we survive our own darkest moments.
Exactly. What if 10 or 20 years from now, when your children face their own impossibly dark canyons in life, a terrible unexpected loss, a profound professional failure, a moment where they feel completely broken and judged by the world. What if they will know exactly what to do? What if they will know exactly how to clear the ashes, pour a new foundation, and build a bridge across their own darkness, simply because they spent their childhood watching you build yours? You aren't just saving yourself right now. You are showing them, in real time, how to survive.
Keep building. The bridge is yours to build.
Keep building. We'll see you next time.